I am not aware that it is. It feels all right, beats as usual. Then your feelings are less superfine than I took them to be. You must be a coarse, callous character, to bear such a thwack without staggering under it. Staggering under it? What the deuce is there to stagger under in the circumstances of a Belgian schoolmistress marrying a French schoolmaster? The progeny will doubtless be a strange hybrid race, but that's their lookout, not mine. He indulges in scurrilous jests, and the bride was his affianced one. Who said so? Brown. I'll tell you what, Hunsden, Brown is an old gossip. He is, but in the meantime, if his gossip be founded on less than fact, if you took no particular interest in Miss Zoraide, why, O youthful pedagogue, did you leave your place in consequence of her becoming Madame Pelet? Because, I felt my face grow a little hot, because, in short, Mr. Hunsden, I decline answering any more questions, and I plunged my hands deep in my breeches pocket. Hunsden triumphed. His eyes, his laugh announced victory. What the deuce are you laughing at, Mr. Hunsden? At your exemplary composure. Well, lad, I'll not bore you. I see how it is. Zoraide has jilted you. Married some one richer, as any sensible woman would have done if she had had the chance. I made no reply. I let him think so, not feeling inclined to enter into an explanation of the real state of things, and as little to forge a false account. But it was not easy to blind Hunsden. My very silence, instead of convincing him that he had hit the truth, seemed to render him doubtful about it. He went on. I suppose the affair has been conducted as such affairs always are amongst rational people. You offered her your youth and your talents, such as they are, in exchange for her position and money. I don't suppose you took appearance, or what is called love, into the account. For I understand she is older than you, and Brown says, rather sensible looking than beautiful. She, having then no chance of making a better bargain, was at first inclined to come to terms with you, but Pelet, the head of a flourishing school, stepped in with a higher bid. She accepted, and he has got her. A correct transaction, perfectly so, business-like and legitimate. And now we'll talk of something else. Do, said I, very glad to dismiss the topic, and especially glad to have baffled the sagacity of my cross-questioner, if indeed I had baffled it, for though his words now led away from the dangerous point, his eyes, keen and watchful, seemed still preoccupied with the former idea. You want to hear news from X? And what interest can you have in X? You left no friends there, for you made none. Nobody ever asks after you, neither man nor woman, and if I mention your name in company, the men look as if I had spoken of Prester John, and the women sneer covertly. Our ex-belles must have disliked you. How did you excite their displeasure? I don't know. I seldom spoke to them. They were nothing to me. I considered them only as something to be glanced at from a distance. Their dresses and faces were often pleasing enough to the eye, but I could not understand their conversation, nor even read their countenances. When I caught snatches of what they said, I could never make much of it, and the play of their lips and eyes did not help me at all. That was your fault, not theirs. They are sensible as well as handsome women in X. Women it is worth any man's while to talk to, and with whom I can talk with pleasure. But you had and have no pleasant address. There is nothing in you to induce a woman to be affable. I have remarked you sitting near the door in a room full of company, bent on hearing, not on speaking, on observing, not on entertaining, looking frigidly shy at the commencement of a party, confusingly vigilant about the middle, and insultingly weary towards the end. Is that the way, do you think, ever to communicate pleasure or excite interest? No, and if you are generally unpopular, it is because you deserve to be so. Content, I ejaculated. No, you are not content. You see beauty always turning its back on you. You are mortified, and then you sneer. I verily believe all that is desirable on earth, wealth, reputation, love, will forever to you be the ripe grapes on the high trellis. You'll look up at them. They will tantalize in you the lust of the eye, but they are out of reach. You have not the address to fetch a ladder, and you'll go away calling them sour. Cutting as these words might have been under some circumstances, they drew no blood now. My life was changed. My experience had been varied since I left X, but Hunsden could not know this. He had seen me only in the character of Mr. Crimsworth's clerk, a dependent amongst wealthy strangers, meeting disdain with a hard front, conscious of an unsocial and unattractive exterior, refusing to sue for notice which I was sure would be withheld, declining to evince an admiration which I knew would be scorned as worthless. He could not be aware that since then youth and loveliness had been to me everyday objects, that I had studied them at leisure and closely, and had seen the plain texture of truth under the embroidery of appearance. Nor could he, keen-sighted as he was, penetrate into my heart, search my brain, and read my peculiar sympathies and antipathies. He had not known me long enough, or well enough, to perceive how low my feelings would ebb under some influences, powerful over most minds, how high, how fast they would flow under other influences, that perhaps acted with the more intense force on me, because they acted on me alone. Neither could he suspect for an instant the history of my communications with Mademoiselle Reuter. Secret to him and to all others was the tale of her strange infatuation. Her blandishments, her wiles, had been seen but by me, and to me only were they known. But they had changed me, for they had proved that I could impress. A sweeter secret nestled deeper in my heart, one full of tenderness and as full of strength. It took the sting out of Hunsden's sarcasm. It kept me unbent by shame and unstirred by wrath. But of all this I could say nothing, nothing decisive at least. Uncertainty sealed my lips, and during the interval of silence by which alone I replied to Mr. Hunsden, I made up my mind to be for the present wholly misjudged by him, and misjudged I was. He thought he had been rather too hard upon me, and that I was crushed by the weight of his upbraidings. So to reassure me, he said, doubtless I should mend some day. I was only at the beginning of life yet, and since happily I was not quite without sense, every false step I made would be a good lesson. Just then I turned my face a little to the light. The approach of twilight, and my position in the window-seat, had for the last 10 minutes prevented him from studying my countenance. As I moved, however, he caught an expression which he thus interpreted: "Confound it! How doggedly self-approving the lad looks! I thought he was fit to die with shame, and there he sits grinning smiles, as good as to say, let the world wag as it will, I have the philosopher's stone in my waistcoat pocket, and the elixir of life in my cupboard. I'm independent of both fate and fortune." Hunsden, you spoke of grapes. I was thinking of a fruit I like better than your ex-hothouse grapes, a unique fruit, growing wild, which I have marked as my own, and hope one day to gather and taste. It is of no use your offering me the draught of bitterness, or threatening me with death by thirst. I have the anticipation of sweetness upon my palate, the hope of freshness on my lips. I can reject the unsavoury and endure the exhausting. For how long? Till the next opportunity for effort, and, as the prize of success will be a treasure after my own heart, I'll bring a bull's strength to the struggle. Bad luck crushes bulls as easily as bullaces, and, I believe, the fury dogs you. You were born with a wooden spoon in your mouth, depend on it. I believe you. Sad I mean to make my wooden spoon do the work of some people's silver ladles. Grasped firmly, and handled nimbly, even a wooden spoon will shovel up broth. Hunsden rose. "I see," said he. "I suppose you're one of those who develop best unwatched, and act best unaided. Work your own way. Now I'll go." And without another word he was going. At the door he turned. "Crimsworth Hall is sold," said he. "Sold?" was my echo. "Yes. You know, of course, that your brother failed 3 months ago?" "What! Edward Crimsworth?" "Precisely. And his wife went home to her father's. When affairs went awry, his temper sympathized with them. He used her ill. I told you he would be a tyrant to her some day. As to him—" "Ay, as to him? What has become of him?" "Nothing extraordinary. Don't be alarmed. He put himself under the protection of the court, compounded with his creditors, 10 pence in the pound, in 6 weeks set up again, coaxed back his wife, and is flourishing like a green bay tree." "And Crimsworth Hall, was the furniture sold too?" "Everything, from the grand piano down to the rolling pin." "And the contents of the oak dining room, were they sold?" "Of course. Why should the sofas and chairs of that room be held more sacred than those of any other?" "And the pictures?" "What pictures? Crimsworth had no special collection that I know of. He did not profess to be an amateur." "There were 2 portraits, one on each side of the mantelpiece. You cannot have forgotten them, Mr.